Hello, Facebook. Happy Memorial Day, May 31st, 2021. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm a little later today than normal, but I wasn't sure what's the best time to come on today, and I wasn't up early today. So I just wanted to do a little early afternoon video here and say Happy Memorial Day to everybody. Hope everybody's having a fantastic weekend. And my notification should be going out that I'm live. And that is it. Awesome. So welcome to people that are tuning in. Hope you're having a great weekend. Happy Memorial Day here in New York. I think this is going to be the best day of the weekend. It is going to be 66 high today and partly sunny. The sun will peek out. It's been miserable and pouring here. Cold yesterday. My run yesterday was literally like 45 degrees and in the rain. So those are runs like that are from like end of March, early April, not the end of May. But needless to say, I got out there and did it. Hello, everybody tuning in. Hi, Joel. If you can just drop a comment, hashtag live as you're tuning in, that'd be awesome. Let's see here. Okay, there I go. I can see myself now and see comments coming in. All right, so a little bit about salmon. A little more about salmon. I've been really hitting salmon hard the last 5-6 days. That's because we have this major salmon sale going on. Basically $150 for a 10-pound case of wild-caught, line-caught, wild coho salmon from Alaska. The season's underway. This is the 2021 season. Alaska is supposed to be one of the best seasons ever, is their forecast, and they monitor Alaska extremely well. With the salmon that go to spawn and all that. It's a very, very monitored, sustainable fishery, unlike other places. I hear a lot of people saying that, well, this salmon doesn't have any antibiotics. This salmon doesn't have any antibiotics. These are raised without antibiotics or no antibiotic organic salmon. First of all, organic, the word organic when it comes to aquaculture, salmon is a self-regulated term. It's a very complex thing to actually go in and certify, very complex. So a lot of those terms are just self-regulated. It's the farm saying, hey, they're doing a better job than somebody else, and they're going to say, hey, we're organic. The cosmetic industry used to be like that. They cracked down on them. I don't know why they don't crack down on the salmon farms saying this, misleading people. But chefs still think that they're serving salmon without antibiotics. Some of these industries or area fisheries still think that, hey, or they advertise, no antibiotics. But I'm going to talk about what no antibiotics really, really means. I'm going to tell a story about when I first got introduced to beef with no antibiotics back in 1999. I was a bit shocked about it. I always have asked questions, like more questions than I'm being told. So I'm honestly interested in this kind of stuff. And if you're going to show up and try to sell me something in my restaurant, I'm going to ask you questions about it. That's just what's going to happen. So some salespeople aren't geared to answer questions. A lot of salespeople are not geared to answer questions. They're geared to sell a product, but not really geared to answer any technicalities of it. So, all right. So, I always talk a lot about Faroe Island salmon. So I figure Faroe Island salmons are I think they really do a great job in marketing. They do a great job in deceiving everybody. They think that it's this great, amazing fish coming from the Faroe Islands. The real thing is it's pen-raised salmon. Faroe Islands started raising salmon, I think, in the 80s, and they had almost 60 farms in the Faroe Islands. And they actually had to get 2/3 of those farms out of there because of the destruction they were doing, the habitat destruction. The fish were very, very sick in the Faroe Islands. Things didn't turn around until like 2005, maybe 2010 in the Faroe Islands, where the government stepped in and said, okay, we're going to pass this veterinarian act. We're going to do certain things that the industry can't get away with anymore. And they went from 60 farms to about 20 farms. Only owned by 3 companies, only owned by 3 major Norwegian companies. The industry there was by far the one of the worst than Scotland probably. The only claim that the Faroe Islands can really make right now about their salmon is that they do have the lowest mortality rate That is a published stat that they have the lowest mortality rate. That means the least fish die from sitting in those pens. Scotland has the highest mortality rate. Like 23 out of every 100 fish die because of the just terrible environment and practices. Faroe Islands probably over 10. I'm not sure the exact number, the current last exact number. I have seen it at 10 per 100 are dying. So their fish still dying. The mortalities are still happening. The fish are still getting sick. The fish are still open to all kinds of infections, lesions, sea lice, all that kind of stuff. They're still putting chemicals out there. They're still doing all that, but they don't advertise it as such. So, all right, so let's just jump into what no antibiotics really mean when these producers say something. So, back in 1999, I was the executive chef at a country club in Colorado, in Monument, Colorado, Woodmore, and one of the guests had asked me, Jane Denzinger, her husband was the past president, and she asked me, Marcus, can you get beef without antibiotics or hormones in it? And I'm a young chef. I'm like 24 years old. And I'm like, and back then they didn't teach that stuff, especially in culinary school. It was not, you couldn't go online and just research all the kinds of stuff you can now. Of course, the internet existed, but it just wasn't like we didn't have access to it on our phones. Not many of us had laptops back then. So it was something you had to go back to the computer, look up, and sit at your desktop. And so she asked me, can you get us beef without antibiotics here at the country club? And I was like, I'm thinking to myself, doesn't all beef? I'm like, what's antibiotics doing in beef? So I quickly started educating myself. And the first guy who came in and says, Marcus, we have natural beef. We have antibiotic-free beef. I said, oh, that's great, antibiotic-free beef. So my question was, you're a salesman, okay, what does that mean? Like, what does that really, really mean? Like, what if the animals get sick? What, is every animal being tested? Because it's all it's a lot of feedlot beef out west. And things switch hands. From one cattle grazer, then puts it to a feedlot or finisher, things like that. So I knew that whole realm of how cattle would get transferred from one owner to another. So this guy was prepared to answer the question very well. He goes, well, Marcus, that's a good question. He goes, out of every 100 cattle, we take one carcass, sometimes two, and test the whole batch at University of Kansas, wherever he said. He said University of Kansas, it was a Kansas beef company. And he goes, if those carcasses come back with a very low level of residual antibiotics, we pass the whole lot as antibiotic-free beef. I'm like, really? I'm like, so you have no really traceability, no accountability. You're taking these animals that you might have weaned them off of antibiotics in the last 60, 90 days. And if you wean them off, they might have very, very low residuals in the last 90 days. That's what they were doing. They were weaning them off of antibiotics. And then moving forward, testing one or two carcasses, one or two animals out of the whole 100 batch and passing it all off as antibiotic-free beef. And, and it wasn't, I was like, this is kind of like a shady business practice, but it's actually what a lot of places still do to this day. They wean them off of antibiotics. It's very, very confusing. In fact, like organic poultry, you can have certified organic poultry that still had antibiotics in it because you're allowed to administer antibiotics day one, and then that's it in a certified organic program. Even in a certified organic program, you're still allowed to administer antibiotics. So it's very confusing and misleading. So when salmon farms say that they don't administer antibiotics or this or that, chances are they're not telling you the truth. Big chances they're not telling you. In fact, here's a current article. It's a current article from like 2-3 months ago in one of my industry journals, Seafood Source. Marine conservation activist, non-governmental organization Oceana has accused a handful of Chilean salmon farming companies as being less than cooperative in providing information regarding the amount of antibiotics used in their production processes. The same ones that tell you they're not doing antibiotics are not being transparent. In August, this is August of last year, Chile's Council for Transparency ruled that the National Fisheries Services Pesca must deliver information to the use of biomass. Salmon companies previously pushed back the petition for providing this information, claiming it was confidential information where disclosure would affect their commercial rights. So, they're making these claims, but they're not willing to be transparent and show to the government there. So even if the government says you can't do this, you can't put this down, this or that down, and they pass laws, things are still happening. That's just what folks, when you put salmon together like that in those type of conditions, there is no way around having disease. There's no way around having lice. There is no way around a mortality rate, a death rate in all these. I have so many windows open here. Sorry, I'm just trying to get some down and get back to where my one article was. So there is... here's another article that was published last year. I mean, it's so there's still even if so, you never really see a salmon farm say where we're pesticide free. Salmon farms use tons of pesticides. Pesticides are in the feed. They put out chemicals like Slice to prevent lice. So they're still using chems. They're still using pesticides. They're still using things. Even though they say, oh, our antibiotic use. Like in Norway, they're not supposed to be using antibiotics to a certain extent. But you can still say, so there's one thing with treating animals that are sick. And then there's one thing that's not raising them. And the I had a good article here on terminology on antibiotics, what it actually means. Let's see if I can find that. Let's see. What does that actually mean? Have no idea. I don't have an article here anymore. I got to close that window. But even like the big national chains like Chipotle and stuff that say no antibiotics, you have to read very, very carefully in between the lines of were they weaned off of antibiotics? Were they ever administered antibiotics? What was the exact story of that? If you're on our Facebook page, I just posted today a picture of a traditional salmon farm, the nets. They're taking the salmon feed, they're throwing it in that's laced with antibiotics. So they might not be treating fish with antibiotics. They're just giving them antibiotics automatically in the food, or somehow it's just it's part of the making the lingo seem like, oh well, this is a legit farm. And then there's what the fish don't eat. What the farmed fish don't eat falls through the nets because this is an open pen. This is why open pen is so terrible, because anything that's in the pens gets out into the wild. So it goes into the pens, it drops down, and it that food that's laced with antibiotics then goes into the wild population. So then you have the wild fish, whether it's salmon or other fish that are in that vicinity of that net farm. Then they start consuming the antibiotics. And then you have this fisherman there that's thinking he's catching these great wild fish that are all of a sudden have antibiotic residues on it. And how do you get antibiotic residues? You're like thinking, well, how in the world will this happen? Well, that's because of these fish farms. Folks, fish farming in open pens, especially salmon, is one of the worst things that's ever happened in food production. It is terrible, terrible, terrible. So stay away from farmed salmon. Don't let a chef fool you. Don't let these companies lie to you. And we're doing this great thing this week, this great sale this week, started today. Wild salmon fillets, 6-ounce fillets, they're flash frozen, they're individually frozen, they're wrapped. We're selling 10-pound cases, $14.99 a pound is what the deal is on that. And they're about 6 to 7 ounce pieces, so expect 24, 25 pieces to a case. 23, they're all weighed out. And it's an amazing, amazing deal. We're doing that. Jim and I aren't making much money on that. We just want you to have some really high quality food. In fact, if you went into Restaurant Depot right now and bought a similar product, not quite the specs that these are, but a similar product, a wild net caught instead of line caught, you're going to pay $140 a case, and that's for net caught, which is cheaper to do than line caught. You're going to pay $140. You're going to pay just $10 less if you walk in the Restaurant Depot and buy a fish that's net caught versus our line caught. So, and I've never seen that product in Restaurant Depot before ever. And when I asked them, they were like, "This is brand new, and it took us like 3 weeks to get it." And yeah, it's selling okay. Hackensack store sold out right away. But you have to, when chefs walk in there, they're looking at the salmon. And I take pictures sometimes when I go in, because literally you can walk in and buy salmon fillets in Restaurant Depot for $4 a pound, $5 a pound. The Faroe Islands stuff, the good stuff, is like $6 a pound, $8 a pound, the most. So when they're going to look at this and say, oh my gosh, $14 a pound, the chefs aren't going to spend that kind of money. Typically, they're not going to spend that kind of money. So we have a great source for our salmon, and we're probably going to do some. People ask us, how about halibut sale? How about a black cod sale and other species that we sell on our grocery list? And we're going to do that too, so stay tuned for that. So stock your freezers up now with salmon. You can split the case with somebody if you want. if you don't have enough room in your freezer, or if you don't think you're going to eat that much, it's going to last. There's no issue with the salmon going bad in the freezer unless your freezer goes bad. So you can keep it frozen. It's going to be perfectly fine all summer. It'll be perfectly. When they catch fish, especially like the tuna that we serve, that's in season only 6 to 8 weeks out of the year, and that's in August, July to August. So the whole catch is done within 6 weeks of the year, and it's frozen. And this is the same tuna that we would serve the following May or June right now that's rolling into the new season from last year. So if the fish is properly frozen, if it's sealed properly, you keep it cold, the fish in a deep freeze, the fish is perfectly fine. So don't think you have to consume it within 30 days or so. That's a lot of people think, oh my gosh, I have to consume it right away. And this is true for a lot of different types of fish. They're in season once a year or whatever, and then they're flash frozen, and 10, 11 months later, you're still using that same catch because there's no catch. You couldn't get it. And it's like soft shell crabs, frozen from Maryland. Chesapeake, once the season's over in September, you're buying them in March, April, May. That's from the previous year, those frozen soft shell crabs from the Chesapeake. So nothing wrong with it. Just a lot of people don't understand that or realize that you can actually hold on to properly frozen, properly sealed stuff longer than you probably think. So stock up on that salmon. Again, Jamie and I are doing this, so we want you to have high quality salmon in your freezer for all summer long, so you can throw it on the grill, enjoy, and be healthy, and avoid farm salmon. So share my videos like this with other chefs, other people that are concerned about what they eat, especially chefs. If we can just sway one chef at a time here and there to stop serving this food, that makes a big impact, a big difference. So just like when Jane said to me as a young chef, can you get me beef without antibiotics? It sparked this whole thought process, this whole triggered my mind, well, what is really going on in our food supply? So you never know when you ask the right chef the right question, they might respond, and they might dedicate their career to being very active, actively seeking out real food, just like myself, and have that as their mission. So you never know that one person that you can ask that question to, and it changes their whole career. It did for me. So that's it, folks. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Ralph, Jennifer, Calvin, of course, Joel from Arizona. Calvin, come on down and pick up your shirt. We have these, Calvin dropped us a great quote to use on a shirt, so we're doing limited runs. Stay tuned this next week. We're going to do some contests where you can get your quote on our T-shirt. And, of course, if you use your quote, you get a free T-shirt, a free Aroma Time shirt. So Calvin's quote is on there. The worst part about Aroma Time is when I have to leave. Excuse me. So we thought that was a really cool quote. So if you have any cool, fun quotes like that, save them. We'll do a contest here on Facebook where you can drop it. We're doing limited runs of these shirts. They're for sale. And, of course, there's a freebie for the person who actually gives us the quote. So get your quote on our shirt contest. Stay tuned for that upcoming this week, and we'll do a series of those. Our hats are coming in. Our Aroma Time hats should be here very soon. We got these beautiful American hats, American-made, and quite pricey, almost 4 times the price as other. The shirts, unfortunately, are not American-made, but the hats that we're getting in are American-made, and so stay tuned for those. They'll be on our merchandise table there for about $30 a hat. They're really high quality American hats. We have some samples of them here, so stay tuned for that. And that's it. Did I miss anything, Jamie? Oh, this week's new $9.99 special starting tonight is crab mac and cheese. We had to take our lobster mac and cheese off the menu because lobster went through the roof. We were paying $22 a pound for knuckle and claw meat. Then it was at $26, then at $28. Then it hit $30, $32. And then 2 weeks ago, it hit over $40 a pound for knuckle and claw meat. $40 a pound. So making mac and cheese for $19, $20, you pay $4 a pound for the lobster. It's not a profitable thing at all. It's actually a loser financially. So we switched it to crab. Crab, we even took a big price increase. I mean, the crab that we're doing probably went up 80%. So hopefully prices will start coming down with food, I hope. Because a lot of restaurants are going to be forced into raising their prices, not just a little bit, but much higher than we're normally used to paying. So hopefully prices will start coming down and things. I saw lobsters to under $10 a pound last week, which is encouraging because they were up to $14 a pound wholesale. So I saw them under $10 a pound. So they get down to about $7.50. We'll start doing our lobster bake out front again, and oysters, shucking oysters, things like that. All right, folks, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it, and hope to see you soon. And thank you for tuning in and commenting.